win at least one game to start with. I have your predictions in my hand here. Are you guys still sticking with them or regretting them?
Can I have my piece of paper back, please, Tanya?
No, you can't, David. We will be revealing the predictions by our experts later today. But for now, it's all on Wesley. So he starts with the English Simon once again.
Best opening out there, and this is very traditional English, and we saw this, what I can remember about this position in the World Championships in, I think it was 86 in Seville. Kasparov-Karpov, they played this E5 reverse Sicilian many times, but this is now one of the more main lines, and this knight retreat has become quite a trendy move. I think Grishchuk first played it, and it's meant to be quite a solid way for black to meet the English opening. And I have to say, one of the things that put me off playing the English as white was this exact line, because I don't like giving my opponent more space when I got the white pieces. So that's the advantage of this setup from the black side. Black has that pawn in the centre, and it really is just a reverse Sicilian, and it's a good dragon for white. But a good dragon may still be a bad dragon in some cases.
No such thing as a good dragon.
Oh, yeah, maybe a bit of an oxymoron there. This position, but it's pretty standard, right, David? I mean, I'm sure you've played this kind of position as well yourself.
Yeah, plenty of times, and it goes back to something we've been talking about throughout the week. It's often players they know where they're comfortable in terms of pawn structure. And Magnus, as you say there, Simon, is losing a bit of time with black. You also start with black, so you start tempi down. But despite the fact it's kind of transposing into a Sicilian type of structure, Magnus is still happy. He doesn't mind losing 2 or 3 moves, tempi, as long as he gets a position that he's very comfortable in. And we see Wesley so already thinking. Magnus maybe just trying to dodge some preparation here as well, getting Wesley thinking at this early stage. I must admit, I'm sceptical. I like white's chances here. It just feels like you're leading in development, but yeah, there must be something.
I was going to say, I made the there's no such thing as a good dragon joke as someone who's lost too many games on the black side of a Sicilian dragon to talk about. But this position is good for white. I mean, this position is super solid, because let's remember that the thing that makes the dragon bad is the Yugoslav attack, right? It's the very dangerous, well-prepared pawn structure that blows black off the board. This position is actually a very fun one to play. You've got the bishop, kind of like the Catalan bishop David. You've got a rook coming to c1. We'll just draw some arrows, use our coloring board here, because I think, yeah, the bishop develops. You have the other bishop. You have the rook on c1. These positions are so easy and fun to play for white. So I'm also skeptical. I like it as a potential rebound game for Wesley, which he desperately needs. So I think he's off to a good start.
Off to a good start, you say that, but he's just burnt about 2 minutes on the clock. Once again, we see Magnus taking the lead on the clock there after this last move by Magnus. Wesley taking a big think here. This last little pawn move, David, is this something that's new, unfamiliar territory? What's going on?
Yeah, I must admit that to me, in this position, if we just backtrack a couple of moves, I've always played this move knight back to b6. It just feels like you're getting out the way. Also, a very popular move has been developed recently, bringing the bishop out. And knight to f6, as Simon said, is trendy. And here, I'm just familiar with bringing the bishop out. I think Magnus maybe, again, he's just trying to get Wesley out of preparation. h6, it's a waiting move. It's a useful move. If, for example, white pushes a pawn forward, it takes away this square from white's bishop. But yeah, it feels like Magnus just playing mind games here. And we should mention to the viewers, OK, a couple of moves have been played, that the dragon is signified by this bishop coming out to g2. And just to show the idea, we call it a reverse Sicilian, because essentially, let's backtrack the whole way very quickly here. Essentially, the dragon, or a very similar, let's go for the accelerated dragon here, a very similar position would be this one, branching from the Sicilian, where here, after bishop to g7, white could, for example, bring the knight back, and we would see something very similar to the game, just with reverse colours. So white is essentially upper tempo, and one move in chess, very important. So it's always signified by this bishop on the long diagonal and this pawn structure.
And how tricky is that, Danny, to face these reverse openings? Because you're familiar with the main line, but with that one move difference, one move advantage, how does that change the dynamics?
It can change it a lot, and it can also, well, there's 2 things, right? Sometimes it can literally change the concrete nature of the position, and so you do have to double check your lines. You have to calculate things to make sure you're not walking into a blunder. But the other thing it can do is change how people feel about it, which is what we're seeing. It psychologically affects them to the point where they're using maybe 3 unnecessary minutes, right? Wesley down on the clock again. So I want to again just call out that while I do like Wesley's position, and I think he has a good chance to rebound and maybe level this thing, at least as far as the first few moves, I still just, you have to applaud Magnus Carlsen. It reminds me of what Fabiano Caruana said about him, which is, again, people underestimate how well you have to know openings to look like you're avoiding openings. And so Magnus has a very playable position for black, playing moves that you highlighted yourself, David, even in a trendy line with knight f6 that you've never seen. h6, the bishop goes to d6 instead of e7. This is not a typical structure for how black plays these reverse dragons, yet he's in a playable position. And guess what? He made his opponent burn 3.5 minutes on the clock. So this is the kind of stuff he does in rapid chess, and it often pays off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point of making things look easy. I mean, you get this not just in chess, but the best footballers, the best musicians, the best anything. They make something look really simple, sound simple, but in actual fact, that's a skill of someone who's an expert, making something incredibly hard seem easy. And that's what Magnus does do by playing actually quite strange moves. I mean, I think if this is also, I think, something that's, if this was played, these moves from black like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you'd probably guess that the player of black was quite a weak player, because it looks quite clumsy. You know, as David said, black's knight has gone to a square it doesn't normally go to. The pawn move, is it a waste of time? The bishop is in front of the queen. What's it doing there? They're quite weird moves. There goes another pawn move, and it's kind of, yeah. This is a modern, very modern way of facing White's position here. And yeah, I do like White as well. I mean, White must have a small advantage here, no more than a small advantage, but he's got a better pawn structure like you get in the Sicilian. He's developed his pieces to slightly better squares, and there's generally going to be pressure on the queen side here with that rook move against black's queen side.
Yeah, and it does kind of reflect how Magnus works on chess. I've been lucky enough to discuss some chess stuff with him, and I know that nowadays he's much more open with kind of the younger generation. He helps them as well, discusses chess with them. And I remember hearing him at a lecture once. He was comparing the King's Indian to a line of the French defense, and he was like, okay, they're exactly the same, the King's Indian and the French. If the center is blocked, it's just like a mirror image. And he's always thinking, okay, I can play this one tempo down. And that's why sometimes he starts the game with 1-8, 1-A3, or these strange moves, and he's literally just comparing these openings, and because he knows all of them, he can recognize patterns and kind of draw on that and take his opponents kind of into areas and structures that he knows better. And yeah, again, the clock time sits potentially relevant for later on. This position, I still prefer White, just because you're up on kind of a well-known opening, just one tempo here, but watch out for Magnus understanding the middle game and knowing what to do in advance, playing extremely quickly in the next few turns.
Getting a glimpse of the genius of Magnus Carlsen here and his opening approach and strategy. And now, once again, Wesley down on the clock. Also, how difficult is it for Wesley from what just happened in game one? A tough opening, but he comes out of it and he has his moment. And then a one-move blunder. How does that affect him?
Honestly, I'm still affected. Can we talk about how I'm emotionally affected by that right now? I mean, I feel like chat's affected. We all got a little bit robbed after an amazing defensive performance by Wesley So, that tenacious D, and then a blunder. And I saw Greg Shahadi in chat. I saw everyone just like going nuts, like, so anyway, we all need to let it go and focus on the moment, including Wesley So, Tanya. You're right, because it's so hard when a game ends that way. You almost would rather have just gotten your bleep kicked in, right? You would rather that happen
Thanks
than...
for that bleep, Danny.
I don't know. I meant your
here.
teeth. Sometimes I bleep out my teeth. The point is, this is really tough, and Wesley really has to just focus on the moment, one game at a time. The guys who live in the top 10 in the world have short-term memory loss by design. They're all there because they have the ability to focus in the moment. I believe Wesley can do it, but he has to speed up a little bit.
He has to speed up a little bit, and a goldfish memory right now is what Wesley needs. David, what do you think about this last move by Wesley with the knight jumping forward?
Yeah, Tanya, I think you've called it back to the chess at the perfect moment, because there's a positional threat on the board. And again, we can draw on that pool of knowledge we have from other openings here, the Sicilian. And in the Sicilian with reverse colors, we talk about an exchange sacrifice, and it's a very thematic one. Here, rook takes knight. You're giving up material. You're giving up a rook, 5 for the knight, 3 points there, but you're shattering black's pawn structure. And let's say black plays a silly move, puts the king on h8. I think Wesley would just go for this without too much thought. You break the black structure. Look at how weak these will be long term. And also, there might be another pawn up for grabs in the center. And if you can get away with this, then look at the ruins of black's position here. It might not be so simple, but these pawns are weak at least. This pawn is weak long term. White's knight is going to get a nice square. And I think if this works tactically, then this is something that Magnus is really concerned about right now. A big potential sacrifice. And I think strategically, that would give White a beautiful position. Something to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's another threat as well, David, I think. And we mentioned that you must know your plans in the middle game. And again, this is a perfect example. David straight away knowing that this exchange sacrifice is so important. But the other plan that you must know in the Sicilian is moving that knight to c5. And you get this the other way around when you're playing Sicilian, but that is a key square. And this manoeuvre of the knight, if you didn't know about it beforehand, you might not recognise it. But when the white knight gets there, it causes so many problems to black's queen side and just generally to black's position. And I would say that's equally as scary, that move. I mean, very simple move, just improving the knight, pressurising black's queen side. And if I was black here, I'd be very concerned because there's a lot of positional threats brewing.
I think you're making a really great point. And the more we're looking at now the clocks get even, the more you're starting to see what we were talking about earlier come to fruition, right? We applauded Magnus's practical approach. We applauded the fact that he's going to get a playable position as black by avoiding the main lines. But we also said the whole time that we liked White's position, right? That we liked the dragon structure reverse, because the thing that kills the dragon is the Yugoslav attack, checkmate pawn storm. If you don't know it, just Google Yugoslav attack, pawn storm. But the point is, right now, this is not a Yugoslav attack, which means White's king is not coming under fire. White holds all the cards on the queen side, whether it's the exchange sack or knight c5. I think Wesley's in a really great spot to rebound here. And again, that would be the drama we want. So we'll see if it's the drama we get.
Wow. Okay, well, yeah, sorry, David.
I was just going to say, Queen d7, maybe your idea on the board, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, at least that maybe stops the exchange sacrifice. I guess it does because you look after your pawns, but it certainly invites the white knight into that square. I mean, you don't have to move the white knight in. You can do other moves here, but it's a very tempting move to play.
And that exchange sacrifice also might still be on the cards. Two very tempting options here for Wesley So. And the one he chooses, will that make his ambition clear in this position, David?
Yeah, if Wesley So can get away with sacrificing his rook on this square, he will love that. But the problem is maybe that the queen can take, and yes, your knight can jump out of the way with a double attack. But once the queen moves, do you have enough? You have sacrificed a rook for just a knight and pawn, and at least this time black's pawns are still alive. I'm struggling to see a knockout blow here. It does feel a bit shaky, black's queen lacking squares, but maybe it's clinging on. And the other idea, Simon, you mentioned in this position, knight to c5. I think that's the more tempting of the two right now. But it's all about whether maybe in this position, black has something. I don't see it right now. Do you push this pawn? Do you maybe try and trade off this beautiful dragon bishop? Either way, Wesley's calculating this right now.
I think pushing the pawn might be the key, because you can't take f6. Oh, okay. I thought you can't take f6 because black will take f3 with tempo. Right. Okay. So that was right. But I guess you can just take e4.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe you just move the knight in this position. For example, you come back and something like this. It looks like White's bishops just have fantastic range. Instead, Magnus has gone for something else. He didn't go for this. Instead, trying to trade off one of those beautiful bishops on g2. And yeah, sacrifices here. He's backing this up with tactics. Is this pawn hanging? This is the big mystery right now.
We've got to show that, the dangers that exist if White does get greedy in this position.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out those dangers.
I was going to say, I'm sitting here surprised to see bishop h3 because I can't make sense of this position, but it looks like knight e5 in the end. There's a capture on g2 and a check on d5. That's it, right? Okay, yeah, so rook e5, we'll just show it. Trade, bishop g2, and then queen d5. Okay, so that's the tactic.
Double attack at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and taking with the bishop, I guess the fact that these pieces are hanging in the air, there might be some tactic here. Maybe it's just b6 kicking away this rook, and same tactic as Danny showed.
I mean, I was going to say this is why he's the world champion. He's not, but he kind of is the best player. I mean, he spots these just little tactics to get out of trouble. I mean, I think the first world champion I can remember he did this very regularly was Alekhine. He used this tactic, and you want to do these positional things on the board, and you have to use tactics to sometimes get your positional desires on the board, and this is a perfect example of that. I probably wouldn't have seen bishop h3. I probably would have just been, I lose a pawn here, and I would have gone very passive. Had I seen the tactics, I'd love to play this move, get rid of White's great bishop, open up the rook, and it's these little things which might save the game, right? And that is a nice tactic. So easy to miss as well, right? Really easy to miss.
Magnus, with his incredible ability to piece up all the minute details in the position, strategic ideas with a tactical offense on the board to keep pieces defended, makes him one of the greatest players of all times. And I want our body language expert to step in right now. Magnus, with folded arms, what does that tell us about what's going on the board?
Well, generally, when you lean back in life, I'm assuming I'm still the body expert. When you lean back and you like relax a little bit, and your arms, they're not crossed, that'd be a bit too defensive. He's just covering his face like this, very relaxed. Look at that, head to the side. Especially when you go to the right-hand side, you're recalling the good moments in your life. And when you have the pineapple hair as well, it gives you that radar to pick up certain positive force.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because we have not talked. We have not talked nearly enough about Magnus's hair. Can we just?
I like it.
Can we talk about that for a second?
I think we can, Danny. I mean, it just reminds me of a cool pineapple. But it's cool, right? I mean, I like it. I like the long hair. What do you reckon, Dave?
No comment on the hair.
No comment. Okay.
Great hair quality, but the hair quality today is.
Wow. Well, no one can talk enough about Magnus's hair, but I want to get back to the position because the pawn on e5 has been taken and it feels like LPDO, lose pieces, drop off. So many tactics. What's going on here?
Yeah, sacrifice. One word for Wesley So right now. He's given up material. Yes, he grabbed a pawn, but he's actually the one going down in a minute because White's rook and White's bishop in the center both attacked simultaneously. He has to give up some material now. It's just how to do it.
He shook his head while we were distracted when he went for it. Now, he does choose to sack the exchange by bishop c7. He could have also played rook takes c6, right? Yeah. Which was the type of exchange sacrifice we were talking about earlier. I don't know if we want to analyze that, because I'm curious why he went for that instead of rook takes c6. Yeah. There's a fork, as David is highlighting. But if you take... whether you take or even keep the dark square bishop, I felt like this was a little more of the traditional type of exchange sack you can see, meaning back up the bishop on the diagonal. At the same time, I mean, the eval says for a reason black would have a small edge, but these positions are full of long-term compensation. It's curious to me that he took on c7, giving up the rook on c5, because he didn't make black's pawn structure any worse if we look at the live game here. Black's pawn structure is totally fine here.
Maybe he's banking on the fact that, kind of opposed to that previous variation, at least he's got a passed pawn that can start running.
Yeah, that's fair. And the d6 square is available for the bishop or the knight long term.
But Magnus doesn't go for it. Instead, he hits the bishop on c7.
Yeah, just kicking this bishop out, no matter where the bishop retreats. I think next move he'll potentially go for it, unless he keeps kind of playing tickle with this bishop and kind of keeps attacking it with his rook or his queen. Interesting
but Wesley
move.
could sack the exchange now.
Yeah, you can take this piece
and then bishop f4.
Anyone's game.
Anyone's game, and that's what Wesley needs, right? I mean, he has to win. He has to win one of these 3 games. I mean, so he's got to take risks. Before the show, we were saying Wesley's a bit averse to taking risks, and I think in this game he's doing the right thing, right? I mean, he's being brave. Got to be brave. But it's weird. He's being brave and he was shaking his head.
I wondered if he was shaking his head in hindsight based on the move he played or the fact that he took so much time to do it. Because he's still down 4 minutes on the clock, and sometimes a player is shaking their head, and we think it's because of the last move, and they're like, yo, bro, you got to move faster. Just like, wake up, shaking their own head. So I don't know. I mean, I think the position is objectively playable. I love the pass D pawn, as you highlighted, David. There's compensation here for Wesley.
I think it's a lovely position for White. I mean, I know the evaluation bar says equal, but again, if we just forget about the evaluation bar or even just bear it in mind and think, who's got the easier moves to play? Yeah. This is such a big question in chess. Is it me or is it my opponent? Is it White? Is it Black? Well, White pushes Derek the D pawn all the way.
Is it
all
Derek?
the way to
is it Derek? It's not Daryl. It's not
Danny.
Doug or Danny.
Yeah,
David. Got my own name. David.
Today it can be Derek, but on other days we will go David or Daniel if you want.
No, I mean, I saw a comment by chat that Wesley's losing because of his time management, and as much as chat knows, I love disagreeing with them. I agree. Yeah. I think that even with Magnus's great prep in the last game, ultimately what happened, Wesley held, and then he blundered because he almost ran out of time. Yeah. In this game, he's got a good position, but he's down almost 4 minutes on the clock. So it's rapid for a reason.
Yeah. Let's do the math here. Black has got an extra rook, and White, which is worth 5 points. White has got a minor piece for 3 points, and 2 pawns. So it's sort of an imbalance, but still balanced in a way. We see the bar somewhat level, and I want to get your opinion. Would you like this position? Would you like to play this position as black or white?
Are we voting?
Yes, we are.
Okay, everyone write down your answers. No, I'm kidding.
I think everyone's just going to say white.
I would rather play white.
I think it's you can't say black in this position. It's just 100% white.
I think it's 50-50 eval by the engine for a reason. I mean, let's let David speak for himself.
White.
Okay, we all want white.
White,
But Tanya,
white
maybe
and
you want
white.
black.
Oh, this is tough. But you know what? I might have that bias of who is playing black, but I get it. That white just feels like you've got easier play, a clear plan ahead. And in these time formats, it's all about how easy it is that you can make fast moves in the position. The plan that you've been highlighting with the D pawn moving forward makes so much sense right now. And with black not having enough pieces to really build an attack against white's king, so many trades have happened. It looks like Wesley's the one who's got that slight edge right now. But with the clock sticking low, it's a game for all 3 results. And maybe draw is the least likely of them.
It is a game for all 3 results. You highlight the clock, the 17th piece, and of course they're both going to be under 5 minutes here soon. But I want to highlight for those who might prefer the rook so that they don't feel bad out there, even if we all chose it. I think there's a reason you could do that because, look, objectively the rook was given the value of 5 versus 3 for the minor pieces for a reason, because as the board opens up, the rooks have more pure power, right? They can control more squares. And at some point, if white isn't accurate, when the time scramble ensues, those rooks are going to get going, right? The open files will be available.
Oof. And was that a mistake by Wesley? Sorry, Danny.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And anyway, so it's the rooks are there for a reason. I think Wesley just wants to really protect c5 with d4 next.
Yeah, and at first thought, I thought, okay, white's bishop is lacking squares. Maybe it's something to do with that the evaluation bar reacted there. But white's bishop does have a nice outpost, a nice perch to sit on d6, protected by a pawn. Confusing to me. I think for both the players, neither of them will regard this as a mistake, even if objectively there is something in the position. And for Magnus, that will have been an expected move. He looks like he's struggling to come up with a plan as black.
I think I saw it.
Okay,
I think I see it.
Bring it, Danny.
I think it's g5 for black.
Let's jump in
And then
show
when
this.
it goes to d6, you can play b6.
Okay.
And undermine the bishop's protection. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why did the engine? Okay, I'm wrong. I thought this was maybe the idea. Like, what is the unique reason why e3 suddenly gives black an edge? It turns out that the computer thinks this is fine. I guess white could just play d4. Okay, I'm wrong.
Well,
I was just guessing. Okay, trying to figure out. But knight e7 instead doesn't do any better.
Yeah, maybe the idea is now this pawn is attacked, and for example, if I just defend it, your same idea, Danny, maybe. But firstly, do we push the pawn? And then, okay, evaluation bar says no. This bishop is running out of squares. Maybe you go the other way. The other natural move here would be to plant the knight in the center. And this bishop, yeah, still a bit loose. And suddenly, if you look at white's position, it's all about the dark squares. Pawn chain here on the dark squares. Maybe the light square's just slightly tender.
I'm changing my mind, guys. I think I might go with black.
It's still tense, though. I've got to say, to a human, it's not obvious at all.
No, maybe it's just in the balance. I mean, the computer's always right, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, I was just assuming white's position so much easier to play. But now that knight's getting a bit funky, and it is getting a little bit funky, isn't it? It's dancing around, creating some problems. It's not clear at all. And this move, okay, well, you attack the queen. You might try to reroute the knight to b3 over to the queen side. Kind of makes some sense to do this. An ideal square for that knight could be like a5 in some situations. c4, d6 would be lovely, but black gets some moves as well. And how do you defend c5 now? The bishop comes in. You stop knight f5. Yeah, it's very, very tense, isn't it?
Yeah, but that b6
really
idea, okay. And
Great call there,
I was
Danny.
coming back
It's
to
on
it,
the
and I
board.
think it's...
Yeah, it's a nice idea.
And sorry.
This is...
Wait.
Whoa, what just happened? Look at that last move that Magnus just played.
Yeah, temporary piece sacrifice. Magnus gave up the black knight, but just by capturing pawns, he was attacking there just temporarily white's knight and white's bishop at the same time, and white couldn't save them both. And here we see still the same material imbalance, knight and 2 pawns for a rook, but Danny called it. The lines have opened up, the position is exploding, and for rooks, that is a good sign. White's knight looks nice and pretty in the center, but black's rooks have access.
It's totally turned around. But Wesley didn't have to part ways with the bishop. Let's back up. Like, you could have moved the bishop and given up the knight. I wonder if that's what the computer wanted to do instead of bishop takes c5 after the temporary piece sacrifice. It's kind of funny because there was something to this position that.
Maybe it's not possible to save this bishop. It's just really clever by Magnus. He forced white to give up this piece rather than the knight. Here you want a bishop maybe in the center, for example, because pawns are on both sides of the board, the bishop with a long range. But you can't save this piece anyway, so he thought he had to give it up for the pawn. And yeah, let's just check out this position. Magnus is giving up a third pawn. OK, it's just been captured. He's going for checkmate. He's going to try and break through on the back rank.
I like it. And also that H-pawn, I mean, it's very natural to use the H-pawn in these positions where white has moved to the dark squares, fianchetto, but lost the fianchetto bishop. That is often a very good way to attack. And heating up, though, because obviously white's a pawn up, right? White has the extra pawn. That white knight, beautiful piece, I guess. I mean, you can't move it. It seems like a nice piece, but I'm also thinking, you know, maybe you need that to come back to defend in some cases.
I've got to ask, what is the answer to this? It looks terrifying here for Wesley. So suddenly his rook is going to be traded and his king's going to be naked, just forced around the board, maybe.
And it's on the board. We're going to find out. Maybe that knight you mentioned has to jump back to take control of that back rank C1 square. Knight E2, but that runs into a nasty check, David.
Yeah, you're right. This check, Tanya, in the corner.
I think one of the key ideas, though, is that black isn't actually threatening anything in the current position. Like, you can move the queen to b5, try to offer a queen trade, maybe a4. Okay, that doesn't work.
Yeah, maybe a4.
Okay, yeah, my point is, like, if black takes f1, you take, and you check. The king's going to run to e2, and we're getting out.
But he made a mistake.
Oh, I don't know. Queen h1 looks scary. Oh, no, maybe. Yeah, you go to e4.
He's gone with Harry the h-pawn, and uncharacteristically, turns out to be a bad move.
What?
Uncharacteristically of Harry.
The computer's just gone haywire. How can h4 ever be a bad move? Well, there's got to be some nasty tactics there, isn't there? I mean, the first thought I was thinking is that you can take the rook and just go for checkmate, but maybe there's something stronger.
Well, Magnus has that look of like, wait a second.
Yeah, he's seen something.
There has to be something here, right?
He smells it.
But can't you just take the rook, bring the other one down, put the queen in the corner? Is there something wrong with that?
Straight for it, Simon.
Just threaten checkmate. Yeah, I mean that would be. You should always look for the most forcing moves, right? And you should always look for the captures, and you should also look at ways you can create threats. And
yeah, so you just take and then
just bring
everything
in
and rook c1.
Simple. Threaten queen d1, checkmate in the final.
What's funny in the end of that line is that the rook and the queen guard all white's counterplay. There's no queen a8 or queen c8.
So there might be something else because the computer doesn't like this, but I would be scared here, definitely, if I was white.
Check this out. I've cheated. I would have resigned here as a player, but I've cheated and checked the computer. Apparently, white just steps forward and starts running.
No way.
So calm. So calm.
No way.
Oh, my words. How can you do that? I mean, that is computer chess, isn't it?
David, look at what Magnus has played.
He didn't play the best move. It's a good move, we should mention. I think this showed up as one of the top moves. But yeah, just to highlight here, Magnus could have won on the spot. I think the idea was actually just this check on h5. I think this would have been a really nasty blow. And if you're, for example, forced to push your pawn, this white king now is pretty much trapped. And any check on the second rank, I'm not sure how you get there. Maybe you go back and threaten checkmate. This looks like it would have been decisive. But Magnus not going for the brute force approach, instead just shuffling his king. We call this a very high-class move, just preempting any checks from the white queen. He's just waiting, but yeah, maybe missed a small opportunity.
I like that move, though, because, again, he didn't see this check and then queen h5 check, but this is a high-class waiting move, right? You avoid your opponent's checking chances, right? You're really putting Wesley So in a tough spot, by the way, with only a minute and 20 seconds left, because now how do you deal with the threats, right? And we see he couldn't do it accurately. He plays queen a4, which helps black's advantage increase a little bit.
And now we see the evaluation from the engine. There's only one winning move. Everything is actually almost level, according to the computer there.
Critical moment for Magnus Carlsen here. He has to find the rook trade, the only move, and the follow-up. That's the most important thing. If he doesn't find the follow-up, he might choose an alternative, and that would just destroy his entire advantage in the position. He's touching the 2-minute mark. David, do you see the finishing line after the rook trade?
I don't see it yet. Magnus doesn't see it yet. For sure, the best move, okay, he's played it. I was going to say the best move is also the most natural move, but you called it, Tanya. The follow-up is the key. Often players don't blunder because of the first move. It's always the final follow-up. And still winning position here. Is it a check with that black queen? Do you dive in now? Maybe it's more effective now with white's queen, unable to check the black king. He does dive in. Your idea, Simon.
I mean, this is the simple way, isn't it? I mean, because the white king just looks, you know, even if white can defend this somehow, which I don't think he can now, you've got two major pieces, big pieces, the biggest pieces, attacking a naked king. And it's not good to be a naked king. You can get arrested, you can get in trouble.
Well,
just
you
put your
get
clothes
arrested if
back
you're
on,
a
you know?
king. You get stories written about you, the emperors.
Yeah, I suppose
has
so.
no clothes and that kind of thing.
I don't think Prince Charles, well, not Prince, King Charles will try this, but like, no, but yeah, it's just too exposed, isn't it? This king, I feel, and you're going to have to. Maybe, can you play this E4 move again? He doesn't play it. He's trying to bring his pieces back, but
it's funny though because I still don't see the mate, Simon. And one of the funny things about this is the queen and knight are really pesky. And I just want to highlight that while E4 maybe didn't work there, if black messes up just one move, that white king is going to run into the middle of the board, and he already has a defender waiting for him. The knight is so pesky when it comes to eliminating the opponent's check. So this is an eval bar for Magnus to take, but I feel like the position is more complex than that does credit, right? I feel like this is a little bit harder for Magnus to convert than first, because I mean, find the knockout blow. Like, I don't have an engine in front of me. Like, where's Black's win?
And you've only got 1 minute 30, even if you're Magnus Carlsen, to find the knockout blow here. I agree. It's not that simple. I mean, you've got many moves which you have. This is where calculation is so important. This is why you train the puzzle rush. This is why you train your puzzles so you can work these things out quickly, because you check with the rook. And I think this is the right way of doing it because you force the king into a more exposed situation. Now I'm thinking, do you bring the queen over? But you have to calculate this right, David. I mean, OK, wow.
By the way, he's giving up the F7 pawn, but it would be mate if you go for it. We can show that if we want, because it's queen C1 first and then queen D1. You have to keep the king in the cage.
Is that just the end?
Queen C1 and queen D1.
Is that literally just as simple as that? Rook B1, there's no move.
Oh wait, that was it. Because you can't play. I didn't realize you can't play queen C2 because queen E1's mate.
I think it's just as simple as that.
And your
There's
queen's
nothing.
nothing.
Wesley's shaking his head.
And that's it.
He's going to resign.
Yeah.
And if Magnus wins this, he takes a 2-point lead. He'll need a draw to become champion of the Aimchess Rapid. And it looks like the only good move that Wesley has here is hit the button.
Just resign. I think he has to resign, and it's just the Magnus show today, isn't it?
7 seconds.
Would you
6.
fight on? Would you give up the queen for the rook and try and set up a fortress with the king, knight and pawns?
It's mate in one.
He's going to allow mate.
And that's it. Wow.